Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Church Security Answer Man. I am so glad you're here today, and we have a great guest to talk about an incident recently in Sibley, Louisiana, at the Sibley Missionary Baptist Church. This is so good for us today because not only are we getting the security perspective at the church, what happened, but we have a police officer with some great experience who is going to talk to us and give us a great perspective from some experience background. So let's not delay anymore. Let's get Jared in here. Mr. MacGyver, thank you for joining us and giving us great experience this morning.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Joe, and glad to be able to bring this awareness and this story to folks and hopefully help them.
Yes, we need some insight for sure on how to handle these kind of things. Can you give us just a little bit about your background so we understand your experience with both law enforcement and church security?
Okay, so I've had 5 years with our local sheriff's office from 1996 to 2001. 2001, I was hired on as an enforcement agent with Louisiana Wildlife Fisheries, or game warden, as most people call it. I did that for 20 years, and in that 20 years, I was involved in training. I've traveled as far as Montana, and trained game wardens in Montana, South Dakota. Trained all over the state, police officers, state troopers, what have you, and just about every aspect of law enforcement. And so I retired in January 4th of this year, and then I was led, faith-based led for me to pursue running for chief of police here in my city of Minden. So that's what I'm actually currently doing, and I'm working part-time with the Minden Police Department, doing some nights and weekends and campaigning on the side, and then doing stuff with church security as well. So that's
nice.
26 total years in law enforcement so far.
Wow, great. Well, we're so glad you're sharing with us today. So now this incident just occurred, what was it, this last Sunday?
Yes, I believe that's the 4th.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Sunday morning. Sure was, this past Sunday.
Why don't you take us through about what the time was? As I understand, it was towards the end of service, but can you take us through kind of what happened and what caught your attention?
Absolutely. So our church service starts at usually about 10:30 in the morning, and normal church service, everything's fine. And with our church, we typically have two men sitting at the front door outside, when church starts, and they're armed, concealed armed, and those guys were sitting outside. But this particular morning, one of the gentlemen, his son-in-law, was inside. He wanted to come in and sit with him, and that's usually when things seem to happen. The one time that this gentleman wants to come in and sit with his son-in-law in the service, about 11:30 that morning, church service is winding down. Pastor's preaching. You can tell he's winding down the service, and the front door is open, and a gentleman starts walking in the church, and it was an immediate sense of saying, "This isn't right." Everybody in service just sensed it automatically. It was almost like you just turned the electricity went out and lights went out. The man walks in the door, walks straight down the aisle. It doesn't even swing his arms, just naturally, like an unnatural walk. And he's walking down the aisle, and he's looking straight ahead, never looks right or left, walks down to the very front row, turns to the right, and sits down. Now, what was odd to everybody, the apparent thing is, when somebody shows up late to anything, whether it's a church or an event, you typically want to try to find the most rear seat to keep from interfering or just walking down in front of everybody to interfere with the speaker. Well, this man doesn't. And like I said, when he walked, he was just like in a dazed stare the whole time. He goes down and sits on the right side of the church, and the pastor is directly, just barely kind of just angled to his left. He's still preaching, and the man just looks straight ahead, kind of to the right of the pastor, never even acknowledging the pastor. And our pastor would later tell me that even when he was walking down the center aisle, he never even looked at him then. So he sits down on the right, and everybody, he just looking straight ahead, and he kind of looks down a couple times and looks up, and you can tell he's just kind of fidgeting, kind of like he's getting agitated for sitting there. And it's like everyone in the church stopped, turned around, and looked at me sitting on the back corner, like, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Because everybody's nervous. The tension's there. We're all like, "Okay, something's not right." So at that moment, I was sitting next to my wife. I said, "I'm gonna go slip outside real quick to find out where our guy is that's supposed to be outside." The other guy that was normally out there, he's sitting in front of me with his son-in-law. They're both armed guys. We're all looking at each other, kind of whispering, sitting on it, and they go ahead, and one moves in position toward the front of the church, behind the guy. There's also another guy sitting almost directly to his right, one row behind him, that's armed. So I know he's covered, but I needed to go outside and see what's going on with our guy up front. My concerns are, did our guy up front just get taken out? I'm thinking the worst. I'm hoping the best, but thinking the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So
excellent.
I slip outside. The other guy that was with me, the guy I told you was his son-in-law, he comes outside. He said, "I'm gonna run around, start checking the perimeter, make sure everybody's okay in the back, make sure what's going on, make sure our kids are safe." While as he's doing that, we both go out the front door. The guy up front's not there. So I'm like, "Okay, what's going on here? He's not here." I run around to one side of the church, didn't see him. Run around the other side, didn't see him. I make my way to the back. I'm looking for him, and and my thoughts are, did this man, is he laying out here, hurt? All these things are going through my head, and I'm trying to think, okay, he's not here. This is not right. Well, directly he walks out of behind the church, the security guy, and I'm, I say, "Mr. So-so," I said, "is everything okay?" He said, "Yeah, I had to take a quick restroom break and come back." I said, "Well, we've got a guy just walked in the church, and something's not right. We've got men getting in a position. Have you seen anything?" He said, "No, I was just gone for a second." He said, "He must have known I was gone and has come in." I said, "Well, we need to, get everything together. We need to tactically get in position." He said, "Well, I'm gonna walk in too and sit behind him as well." I said, "All right, well, I'm gonna stay back here and cover the front door." We in law enforcement, it's that +1 thing. We never count out that somebody else may not be, never assume that they're by herself, and so that's where we're at on that. And so everybody's in position. The pastor is winding the service down. He did something that was very good. He left behind the pulpit and walked down in front of the men, and he was still preaching. He was pacing back and forth, but I could tell he was kind of looking to see if he could see a weapon on the gentleman. Now, this guy's dressed in jeans and a black t-shirt, shaved head like mine, and a goatee, so put no judgment there, please. But so he's down there, and the guy's still just, even the pastor's pacing back and forth in front of him, kind of preaching congregation. The guy never turns to the right, left, anything. He's still kind of fidgeting around. So we caught this pastor, concludes the service really quick, and he does the invitation. Well, this guy gets up, goes down, takes a few steps forward, falls down his knees, and throws both hands up straight in the sky, looks up in the sky, and starts kind of just shaking his head. And I could slightly hear a mumble, but I couldn't hear very much. And and one of the things we're trying to do as a church is, if this man is truly under conviction, if this man is going through something, we're trying not to be quick to judgment, but at the same time, it's kind of like in law enforcement, you're nice but on your guard. But the bells and whistles are telling us something else. The red flags are alerted with us. We know something's going on. It's not right. Pastor calls on somebody to pray to in the service. The prayer said, everybody starts exiting the building pretty quickly, except for about maybe 10 of us guys, and we're armed. So we're kind of behind him, and he's chanting something that we can understand. And let me back up real quick, because I want to throw this in there. Before, when the pastor gave the invitation, the man was knelt down. The pastor actually went down, knelt on his knee, approached him and said, Glad to have you here. Is there anything that we can do for you? Can I pray with you? He said, no, I'm a prophet. So, okay. So the pastor gets up, just the continuation of the bells and whistles. Um, we, everyone's out of the service now, and it's just us men there. We're sitting all in the front row. This guy has no idea we're behind him. He's still facing forward. He's got his hands in the sky. And a couple times he kind of put his hands down to the floor and kind of brought him in, brought his hands back up, and not being judgmental to any religion, but sometimes it could have been, I wasn't sure what religion he was maybe practicing by the motions he was making.
Sure.
So and we're standing in, I can't see any weapons at this point. Well, then he starts, it's like his prayer starts building up. He starts getting agitated. His voice starts kind of growling. He gets out loud and he starts saying, basically calling people in our church so-called Christians and living in apostasy. And he's saying things like, the one thing that really set everything off is when he said, we've got to come down. We've got to kill all of these so-called Christians. We've got to crush them, and we've got to kill everything, anything that's moving, everything. We've got to show them, and we have got to crush and kill them. Well, that's it right there. So I told the gentleman, I'm whispering to him, it's like, stay on your guard with him. I'm running out. I'm gonna step outside, call the sheriff's office. We're fixing to get everybody here. I step outside to call the sheriff's office, and this same sheriff's office I worked at, and still work closely with these guys, the ladies and gentlemen there. Told the dispatcher, I said, look, we've got a guy threatening to kill people. Right now, we don't have a weapon. He's not brandished a weapon, but he's covered. But I need you here as quickly as possible. They said, okay, we're getting people en route. I walk back in. He's getting more agitated. He's moving around, he's shaking his hands. And, it's almost like the thought in my mind is he building up the courage for something? Is he contemplating something, building the courage by getting more agitated as the prayer goes on?
Sure.
So I'm texting the dispatcher. I said, let's get our guy, if you would, step it up code 3, which is, the highest level, get him here. I don't know what's fixing to transpire. So within about 5 to 6 minutes, the deputies roll in. I'm telling the guys, stay with him. I'm going to step out and meet the deputies. I walk out, I meet with the deputies. I said, look, give them a quick briefing. If you slip in, you can hear some of this. Y'all are able to get the element of surprise on him. And so as they ease in, they're hearing the aggravation. They hear him saying just all kinds of different things. Nothing about the kill anymore, but just aggravated with stuff. And they make the determination to slip up behind him. Right when they get in position, they go down to cuff each, or not to cuff, but to slide their arm inside each one of his arms, and at the same time announce police. They grabbed his hands, put him behind his back, was able to handcuff him, thank God, without incident. Everybody could just at that point breathe a little sigh of relief. We took him outside, went ahead and advised him of his rights, put him in the back of the unit. And the thing that stuck out to me the most in the post part of this is that I was standing there with the deputies, and the lieutenant said, man, why in the world would you say that you want to kill everybody and kill everything in a church setting knowing you got people there? His response was the disturbing part, because he didn't say, well, they misunderstood me, or I didn't mean it that way. That's not what I was intending. His response is he looked straight at us and said, it's not illegal to pray out loud what's in your heart. And so, and before they put him in the unit, of course, he was checked. No weapons were found, not on his person. He did drive there. His car was parked over there in the parking lot. No weapons were found in the car. It was discovered that the man had, he did, when they were checking his identification information, that he was part of a military branch. And they're still checking on that to find out, but he did say he did some combat. So, I'm not sure if this is a deal, some post-traumatic stress stuff going on. But one of the things I am certified in is I'm what's a DRE, or what's called drug recognition expert. And for the ones that don't know, there's only a few thousand of us in the entire world. This is something that we can detect when people are under the influence of drugs other than alcohol. And I'm doing some eye examinations. I'm checking a few other things, just limited things at this point. And I've come up with the determination the man's not drug induced. He's not under the influence of alcohol or drugs at this time. It's just, for lack of better terms, the wires are kind of arcing and not hitting just right inside his brain. And
do you think it could have been schizophrenia or something? Because typically those people are drawn to church, and him saying that he was a prophet.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree. And so I've got a very close family member that is a permanent paranoid schizophrenia. So for years now, I have personally seen and witnessed and all parts of that. I mean, and know what it's like if this person I'm talking about gets off their medication. I mean, it's almost a point you have them committed, and they it's starting to become. But we're seeing more and more of that across. I know here in Louisiana, here around our city, we're starting to see more and more paranoid schizophrenia, or what's diagnosed as that. And one of the things that I do know from drug recognition is that long-term use of methamphetamines it can be permanent paranoid schizophrenia. And not to say this man was doing that, but the person I'm referring to, the family member, that is the case, as is a lot of cases we see in law enforcement. And it's kind of one of the things not to get off track, but that's becoming more and more prevalent in our country, it seems like.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's good. What a great recount of that incident. I appreciate you telling us about this. And I love the fact that, I'm sure our community here, our audience is, we're constantly talking about keeping that balance. And what a great job, even though this was getting to be a little bit freaky, for lack of a better terms, a little scary. You guys still kept that balance of saying, okay, well, maybe it's just exercising his religion or whatever's going on, so before you guys actually moved in, so I like that. So what a scary situation, especially for those who don't have your experience, that becomes very scary.
Well, and it's it's after this incident, Wednesday night we met at church, and the pastor, we got up and spoke, and we've talked, and we said we're fixing to heighten our security. We're fixing to revamp our security. The pastor talked to me, said, I want you to speak Wednesday night at church to everyone. So it's one of them deals that we got up, we spoke to the church, and I told them, I said we're fixing to completely revamp our security. We're fixing to get more training, run scenarios through our church. We're going to, and we just went through a whole host of different things. And before the service was ended, it's one of the things, and I don't mind, and I'm glad to do it, but I got voted on to be head of security for this, run this. So, but that's fine, because it makes people feel more at ease. I want folks to come to church and say, no matter what's going on, we're in here, we're fine, we're taken care of. And that's the message we want to send, when people visit, or our church members are there, or kids are there, that everybody feels safe. And that's what we'll bring about. And we're in the works right now, doing all kinds of different revamps on our security.
Yeah, that's great. And I don't want to get into numbers or anything. I don't want to make your church a more vulnerable or anything with numbers or anything, but I will want to talk in a second about, are there any major changes that you're thinking of making based on this? I also want to point out how easy it is, to get distracted or leave our post. No fault of the member that had to use the restroom, but I find the same things, as it seemed like at our church, when we added a few extra security members, some folks started saying, wow, why do we need so many security? But it's like, as soon as somebody needs to use the restroom, and as soon as we have to help fill in for the ushers, or, as soon as we get taken away for something else that's a normal every Sunday or Saturday, whatever time you meet, it seems like all of a sudden that drops us down to 1 or 2 people, and then we have vulnerable positions. So it's nobody's fault, but it is something that we have to try to account for. So
Exactly. I mean, we're not a mega church. We're not a very large. We're a small church, and so having the most men that we can as far as coverage is important. And you nailed it. You nailed it right. That's what it takes. Is just when you have somebody step out or have to use the restroom or something like that, it can actually diminish our numbers very quickly. So
yeah.
that is correct.
Without giving us any numbers or exact details or anything, what are you thinking? Because you have great experience from both the security and the law enforcement perspective. What are you thinking of doing different going forward without giving us too many details in case somebody's
Well,
watching?
we're going to our cameras. I mean, cameras are something that's huge. We're going to be running cameras. We're going to see every access point of the building. Um, Cameras are definitely going to be there. One of the things we tend to forget about sometimes is medical supplies and our medical people in the church, because in the event that something happens or somebody gets hurt, or God forbid that there is maybe there is gunfire or something. I want to know how many medical people we have trained in our church that can give aid to someone that may need it. Having plenty of medical supplies within the church. We said that the camera system, we're going to start running more scenarios on how to deal with someone that may actually wondering or have to escort from the premises that may be could be drug induced or impaired. How to, putting firearms aside, just how would we escort them out? How would we deal with that? Doing things with working with our local law enforcement, what people are to do if somebody was able to penetrate through the church, how would people react, how should they react. A lot of times, and I talked about that Wednesday night, is a lot of people, if they heard, if someone shouted out weapon or get down or something, a lot of people's natural instinct is get up and run. Well, then, you know to me, that's the worst thing we do, instead of getting down to the floor to allow the ones that are trained to handle the situation. And,
Yeah.
we're talking about that collectively as a church. Perimeter checks, radio comms. We're going to definitely have radio communication between the folks in the back, the ones in the front. We have people that do like children's church, Sunday school, things like that. And
Yeah.
they need to know to be able to lock down and get everyone in. And so, just all those type measures, and actually bring in our sheriff's office and bring them in and let them see what our training stuff, if they have anything to offer for, like, if they respond uh, to assist, how, blueprints are great.
Yeah.
Knowing where they're at, if something's locked down in the church, how they can gain access, where they gain access. We're going to change our locks on our building, all the locks. And so we're going to get our guys, and we're developing a plan. I'm working with some other law enforcement officers about a church plan to, to fit our church, because every plan, you can have a base plan, but each church is different in the dimensions of it. So, have a base plan and then work around that base to make it our plan, so to speak.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, one other question I thought about, because it is a question that I think some of our folks are concerned about, is going back into what your process and how you handled this situation. For this level of a situation, did you call 911, or the non-emergency numbers? Did you call a non-emergency number when you asked for help?
Yes, I mean, because like I said, I've worked here in this parish that I'm at. I worked here 26 years, so I know everybody, all the law
Yeah.
enforcement people, the dispatcher. So I knew I could call the direct line. The dispatcher that was on duty actually works at the sheriff's office full time, part time with the police department. Right across, we're almost across the road from each other, so we're very close. Most of the law enforcement was close around here, so I knew that I could call, get directly to them, and and that's another thing you brought up, the 911. Having someone that will be assigned to do just 911 calls in the event something like that happens.
Yeah, that's great. Well, man, I sure appreciate you and you sharing with us about this incident. So, is there anything else you want to add before we kind of start winding things up?
Just that, this, I would encourage everyone to take this opportunity to really look at this. I've heard different things, and people, there's, I understand the concerns of people. Some people say, well, I don't want a gun in the church, or not, I don't want this or want that. But if we look back at Bible times, if they had guns in Bible times, they would have been using those. They had swords and spears and slingshots and things like that. But and the Bible talks all throughout about security of the city and security of the churches and things that they had. And so, we've got, our faith is strong, but also God gives us a sense to use that, to know that we need to be prepared in every aspect that we can. And folks need to feel comfortable, because the worst thing that could ever happen is people feel so insecure about going to church that they stop going to church. And we don't want that.
Right.
It's already a scary situation for our schools today, and as well. And so everyone's trying our best to make schools be as safe as possible, and churches now to be as safe as possible, because let's face it, they can be soft targets. Criminals, or a person that wants to do harm to somebody, if they're going to look for the easiest, softest target to hurt as many people as they can, and in most cases in their own lives when doing so, and or whether they do or not, but they just want to hurt as many people, and that evil exists. And it's, our best thing to do is to try to be prepared for that in every sense that we can. And that's, I think that I'm hoping that's the reason I told the story. I put the story out, is I wanted to bring awareness to everybody that this situation fit the textbook situation of everything that could have happened. If the only thing that was different is he didn't have a weapon. If he'd had a weapon, it'd have been a textbook scenario where guy walks in, opens fire, has mental issues and what have you. So thank God it worked out that he didn't have a weapon. We were able to make a bad situation good, and we're learning from it. And I'm hoping that others can take this and learn, because it can happen anywhere.
Yes.
That it's anywhere now.
Yep. Yeah, and I sure appreciate you sharing with us. So, just for those of you watching, I sure appreciate Mr. McIver sharing with us, and what great experience. And don't forget to share this with others in your church. Share this video, let them know, and let them hear the information as well, especially your leaders. If you're having any issues with convincing them, it's these kind of things that we need to hear. And if you need more information, don't forget you can go to our hub, which is churchsecurityanswerman.com, and as well as watch the videos that appear here at the end that are good for you. So thank you, sir, again for taking your time. And I do wish you luck on the chief of police race there.
I appreciate it.
So